What happens when you put a pelvic floor physical therapist and a podcast host, both absolutely obsessed with bridging the gaps in endometriosis care, behind the same mic? You get a conversation that finally makes sense of the messy middle, the parts of chronic pain that aren't always endo, the sneaky musculoskeletal pain generators no one's talking about, and the practical, doable tools that help you reclaim your body piece by piece. We're diving into why the delay of diagnosis creates long-lasting challenges in the musculoskeletal system and what you can practically do about it. It's validating, it's energizing, and honestly, it's kind of the conversation that makes you feel like someone finally turned the light on. And joining me for this powerful, joy-filled deep dive is the incredible Dr. Taylor Reyes, Doctor of Physical Therapy, board-certified functional manual therapist, chronic pain educator, and someone who brings both expertise and genuine heart into every word she shares. If you've been trying to connect the dots in your own endo journey, or if you've ever wondered, is this pain endo or is something else really going on? Or if you just love hearing two passionate humans absolutely nerd out about healing, you're in the right place. You're going to want to stick around. Welcome to Endo Battery, where I share my journey with endometriosis and chronic illness while learning and growing along the way. This podcast is not a substitute for medical advice, but a supportive space to provide community and valuable information so you never have to face this journey alone. We embrace a range of perspectives that may not always align with our own, believing that open dialogue helps us grow and gain new tools. Join me as I share stories of strength, resilience, and hope, from personal experiences to expert insights. I'm your host, Alana, and this is Endo Battery, charging our lives when endometriosis drains us. Welcome back to Endo Battery. Grab your cup of coffee or your cup of tea and join me at the table. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by Dr. Taylor Reyes, a powerhouse physical therapist whose work beautifully blends science, compassion, and true whole body healing. Dr. Reyes is a licensed physical therapist, doctor of physical therapy, and a board-certified functional manual therapist. She's known for treating patients from all walks of life, and for her passion in helping those with chronic pain shift their mindset, rebuild their trust in their bodies, and reclaim an empowered healing journey. Her approach is rooted in what she calls the pillars of healing: exercise, nutrition, and sleep. Her training is extensive and continually evolving, from gynecological visceral manipulation to advanced obstetrics and pelvic floor physical therapy, and board certification in functional manual therapy, a system that honors the intricate interconnectedness of every tissue and system in the body. With national and international experience and deep commitment to patient-centered care, Dr. Reyes brings heart and expertise to every conversation. So grab that cup of coffee, settle in as we continue with our part 2 in our 2-part series with Dr. Taylor Reyes. And just in case, here is where we left off and where we're going.
As a physical therapist, my rule of thumb, because I'm perfectly capable of hurting myself or getting tweaked, or getting a crick in my neck or whatever. And so if I say I wake up with a pain, I'm like, okay, I'm going to breathe and I'm going to say I'm in pain, but I'm not in danger. And that's a little bit of cognitive behavioral therapy tips, right? Sometimes when we're really retraining a pain pattern, we'll say out loud 7 times, I'm in pain, but I'm not in danger. I'm in pain, but I'm not in danger. I'm in pain. Not try to gaslight yourself, but just to ground yourself. Right? So because we're not in danger. Right. My facet joint is being stupid. That's what's happening, or it's like part of my vertebra is being weird. So there is no danger. So I'll pause, like, okay, this is what it is. And then I'll get up and I'll move. I'll do therapeutic movement and just do some movement that's there's a difference between sharp shooting pain and dull achy pain. Right. Or hey, that's a stretch. So find a pain-free or an acute pain-free or a acute pain-free range of motion and just kind of no, that's not good. But if I do this, I'm okay. And if I breathe while I do that, and maybe I can add some arm motion in, hey, either in a few hours, it's going to go away because some inflammation probably built up and I probably need some time for that inflammation to get out of my system. And so after about 3 to 5 days, if I'm still really struggling with it, then I might ask one of my coworkers, be like, hey, can you hook me up? like either throw a dry needle in there or like give me a little pop or something, just something to disrupt the nervous system, right? So that the movements are more effective. Or I'll pop into one of my chiro friends and just be like, help.
Yeah.
I tweak myself. And then you just go about, you just kind of go about your day because we all are going to encounter things. And then the other thing that is just like awesome about the delayed diagnosis is that typically you're in your like late 20s, early 30s. And then guess what's around the corner? Perimenopause.
Yep.
So it's like, is this endo or is this perimenopause? Like, I don't know. Or am I just being a human? And so I think it's like I'm not going to call it the ability because really it comes with repetitions in life of experiencing pain is you just kind of have to be able to step back and just what is the most important question? I am not in medical danger. My life is not in danger. I am not about to have a heart attack. I am not having a stroke. I am not hemorrhaging.
Yeah.
So what's the next tier? What's the next level of triage when it comes to pain? And then, what's in my toolbox? What has my therapist taught me? When I go to lift my leg, do I need to forcefully exhale as I lift to kind of counterbalance that pressure?
Right.
Because a lot of my patients, whether they're endo, low back, ankle, shoulder, when I moved, it hurt. Okay, let's do that again. But before you do, I want you to forcefully exhale through your mouth and then start to move. And that creates that pressure system. We're not holding our breath, but we're just we're engaging our core to help support our physical body. And then, so again, it's like number of reps you get because we're going to have moments of pain.
Right.
So how do we manage it? Or like, I'm driving down the tollway and I've been clenching my jaw and my butt for the last 20 minutes because people are psychopaths when they're driving. Before I jump, my radio is on like 1,000% volume. And I'm sipping on my iced coffee before I get out of the car. Do I need to pause, turn the ignition off, turn the radio off, put my coffee aside, and do some deep diaphragmatic breathing to bring ourselves back down to baseline or to neutral? And this is where I'm going to say, like, yes, before I had my excision surgery, and a lot of other people that I work with are the same way, sensory sensitivity or noise and light sensitivity, it's huge. Right. So for me, I know I'm having a good day when I can listen to the music on blast.
I don't listen to music.
I hate music, but like maybe one day a month, I like music.
Right.
Otherwise, I am just like, it's like
overload.
Opening and closing a drawer of spoons and it's like makes me scratchy. So I just don't, I'm like, okay, podcast on low to make me happy, or just don't listen to music, or just don't listen to anything and reflect. So like, and this is not just me, this is again, like clinical experience. I see this with my patients too, but like sitting under a fluorescent light for an hour, no way. That was never going to happen. But then you take that high volume of inflammation out and your nervous system isn't like WFT, bro. Like what's going on? We actually have a chance of grounding. We actually have a chance of getting our parasympathetic nervous system. So if a listener's not familiar with it, you have your autonomic nervous system, which is kind of like you have your fight, flight, faint, freeze, and then your rest and digest. So sympathetic nervous system is more of the, hey, I'm getting chased by a bear or I'm driving down the tollway. We need to have this certain level of elevation to be able to perform the task. And then we have parasympathetic, which is like, oh, it's time to chew our food and relax and digest, and it's time to go to sleep, or it's time to bring it down. So we can have better social interactions or not look like a psychopath when we're talking to somebody. But we need a balance. Sympathetic's not bad. Sympathetic isn't necessarily perfectly good, but where do we create that balance? If you're always living in the sympathetic because your nervous system is like, what the heck's going on? Because we have especially our vagus nerve, we have this neural feedback from our pelvic organs saying, rah, 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 there's something going on. There's these lesions that are like giving me heck, but you're sitting reading a book. Those two things aren't connecting. So it's like when you're living your life, how do we balance your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system with or without pathology, right? Because any overstimulated mom is going to identify with this, whether or not they have pathology, right? Especially like 6 p.m. when you're cooking dinner. I think one of the best tools I recommend to my patients are these little earbuds. They're not wireless earbuds, or they are wireless, but they're not Bluetooth. Right. They're called Loop, and they're just to reduce the decibels. You can still hear, but the decibel level is a lot lower. So it's like,
I need that in the
You're like,
car
oh
with
my
my
gosh.
kids.
Yes, that's it was something I wore all the time before
Yeah.
I had my surgery. And I gave in my sister, I gave in my patients, and they're like, oh my gosh, it makes so much of a difference. And I'm like, I know. It's
Yeah.
amazing because our nervous system keeps us alive. Our
Yeah.
nervous system is like our biggest advocate, but sometimes it just doesn't speak our language. So
Yeah.
how do we try to get a translator? I tell my patients one of our biggest translators or one of our biggest ways to connect is through diaphragmatic breathing, like intentional breathing, intentional, like
Yeah.
bringing ourselves down. Because, diaphragm breathing is a core connection exercise. You can do it if you just had a C-section. I'm not telling you this is not medical advice, but I'm just saying like it is so, because you have to breathe, right? If
Right.
you're breathing, you can do it. But we also know it through evidence that this is a direct way to stimulate the vagus nerve,
Right.
which the vagus nerve feeds into parasympathetic tone, bringing yourself back down. We also know that diaphragmatic breathing stimulates your lymphatic system, which is like your detoxification system. So I hate that I forgot this word, but it's basically like if you had an angiogram and you threw up the vascular system and you're watching it light up with blood flow, there's a test that's the exact same for your lymphatic system. I'll have to look it up. I cannot remember it off the top of my head.
Yeah.
It's not second nature to say it, but there's been studies done where they're looking at the lymphatic system lifetime and they have people diaphragm breathe and it lights up. And vibration plate.
Yes.
Vibration plate. So it's vibration plates aren't just a fad. Is for lymphatic therapy, vibration plates are very therapeutic. Very therapeutic. And this is pure anecdote. This is something I was telling you earlier that manual lymphatic drainage has really helped the symptoms that were making me want to pursue a hysterectomy.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, I would love to keep my uterus if I can, because I also love that it provides mechanical support to my ovaries. And if I can avoid going into ovarian failure sooner rather than later, that would be great,
Right.
But also I would prefer a stronger quality of life. And then when I started doing the lymphatic drainage regularly, that's the other thing. There's a lot of therapies because when the pathology is present, a lot of times you can't just do a therapy once or twice. You have to make it a part of your routine because again, going back to that, what can we do to manage it naturally? You're going to be managing it naturally your whole life. Or if you're one of the lucky ones where menopause actually reduces your symptoms,
Right.
who knows? Some do, some don't. Pregnancy
Right.
helps some people, some don't. Or maybe it only helps some symptoms, but people don't realize a lot of the other symptoms they're having are actually endometriosis. So just throwing it out there. What are the things that you're doing to long-term manage your symptoms? For me, manual lymphatic drainage has been very therapeutic. For
Same
other
for
people, it's
me.
not as, yeah, it's the best. I love it. I think I'm like, how are we just like really pushing lymph therapy in the conventional world when it is an entire system that detoxifies? Like, where
It
has
plays
this
such
been?
a huge role in everything. Like I did a whole episode with Dr. Gabby Mawad about the lymphatic pathways for endo.
Yeah.
So if you haven't listened to that, listen to that. And then I also did one with the vagal nerve and neuropalveology specifically with Professor Mark Possover talking about this very thing because they're so interconnected. Like the way that it affects you from head to toe and because it's one vein. I mean, it is the largest one going through that body. It is your message system for your entire body. It's like the trunk of the tree branching out, right? When it comes to those nerves and how it talks to one part of the body to the brain, And so we should be talking a lot more about ways that we can reduce inflammation and pain through these pathways because I can tell you, like so many people have reoccurring surgeries. If you're seeing a doctor 5-6 times for surgery, you need to find a new doctor. I'm sorry. I said what I said.
Please say it again.
I understand maybe once or twice, but if you're seeing 5 or 6 times, and I've seen this on forums where someone's like, yeah, they're like recommending their doctor. They've done all 6 or 7 of my surgeries. And I'm like, that's not a doctor I want to go to. Like that. I'm sorry. That's not how it works. And so why aren't we talking more about ways to manage some of these pain generators and manage our inflammation in a way that's tangible and accessible for everyone? A vibration plate really isn't that expensive. I think they're like $100 on the low end, maybe.
Yeah,
So,
on the low end, but there's companies that you can use if you have HSA, you can use
right.
HSA to buy it. So it's one of those things like lattes are like $8 a latte
Right.
now. So
That's stupid.
let's just make some at home for a hot second, and then you'll get your vibration plate,
Right.
And I don't mean to be uncompassionate when I say that, but
Right.
this is not this is not for the faint of heart. We have
No.
to make sacrifices.
Well, and coffee is my love language. So, and I have given up a lot of like going out and drinking coffees and things like that because it didn't make me feel any better. Although it is like an emotional support drink for me.
Uh,
It's not, but
yeah.
those are the things like lymphatic massage is like, I love it so much and I feel instantly better
It's
getting that. And I pee so much better. Like, because that's the point of it, right? To have someone really good to do that. Those are really good, tangible ways. And something that you said earlier about like, just sitting in low light, low noise. And one of the things that Sean Whitney had talked about, he was at the Endo Village gathering where he talked about we were talking about going into an appointment that I was super, super anxious about because anytime you go in to see a new provider, I don't know anyone that's been like in this professional patient zone that doesn't get anxious going into a new provider. Like it's so overwhelming. And especially if you have any neurodivergent at all, like it's so hard to like walk in, right? He said it is scientifically proven that if you spend 15 minutes before your appointment taking deep breaths, being quiet, being still, you're able to walk in much more regulated. Then on the other side of that, and this works for both therapy, doctor's appointments, whatever, and I think this could probably works for physical therapy as well, but like spend 15 minutes after, decompress, take some breath, go take a bath, go, get a really good glass of water and just be for a second. And that's something that like for me, sitting down as a patient being like, I just need to sit is really, really hard. And especially as a mom to find the time to do that. But also like, that's why I don't listen to music in my car because I'm overstimulated as it is. And so sometimes I will intentionally plan 15 minutes before any appointment to just breathe, like just be in a space. And I think that we aren't good at this in our society in general because we constantly have things coming at us, whether it's through our phones, that little magic black box that we have that we're constantly inundated with everything, or it's the intrusive thoughts that come to us because of all of the trauma and doubts and the things that we see. It's really hard to sit in silence without that taking control. But if you start breathing and focusing on one really good, valuable thing, I have noticed just myself, you just feel like your heartbeat is slowing down. You're taking a breath. And I think that you are more in tune with your body that way. You're more in tune with what pains are actually happening. You're able to identify things a lot better because your mind is a lot clearer. And I've talked about this before, but like we as chronic illness patients, we have a buffet of life, right? We have a smaller plate than your normal buffet plate. We can only take on so much. So we have like a 6-inch plate compared to the 12-inch buffet plate. If we try to fit everything on the buffet on our 6-inch plate, it's going to be overwhelmed. It's going to lose its, the essence of what we're going for. So just knowing how to say no sometimes, or knowing how to put specific things that are going to add quality to your life on that plate and being okay with just those things is better, but hard because we want to taste everything, but we just cannot handle it all.
I like that better than like the spoons analogy.
Yeah.
Because sometimes spoons can get a little convoluted.
Yeah.
And that's like what I do. I try to practice what I preach, and I only see so many patients a day, and I put 15-minute buffers in between because I recognized early on that like patient to patient pace made me kind of like, ugh. And then also I felt like I was starting the appointment with the patient elevated. Right. And a lot of what we do, and especially with chronic pain, your patient is operating off of your own energy. So I'm like, for my sake and for the quality of my care, I'm not going to see patients back to back. And I'm only going to see so many patients a week. And it's really, or just like even TikTok, right? Like, even if it's not a physical energy expenditure, like with your emotional stress and health, TikTok might be taking up 90% of your plate, and it's junk food. So you're putting trash on your plate when you really need to be getting nutrients. So what are the things that you could be doing to support it instead? Or the modifications, right? Like 1 cup a day of coffee for me, I can live like that. 3 cups, that's when I start getting into trouble, So like, how do we still enjoy the things? Because a lot of endometriosis patients, there are a lot of foods that they cannot eat. So it's like, or they don't tolerate rather. So, and it's like, we won't even get into orthorexia, but it's like, almost like another 3-hour conversation. So it's like, how do you find that balance of what works for you? So kind of going back to that, the 3 pillars of natural management in endometriosis are downregulating our pelvic floor therapy and our anti-inflammatory lifestyle. A lot of times the downregulation, I mean, it really does feed into the physical body of pelvic floor therapy. And then it also anti-inflammatory lifestyle feeds into the downregulating. So it's more of like a Venn diagram, right? Where they overlap versus like just 1, 2, 3 separate entities. They all feed into one another. With the patients who really, really complex, really, we have all the things going on. And I bring up, we finally have the conversation, whether it's in the first visit or third visit, because when you drop a endometriosis potential on someone's plate, like that's a lot to process. And so if someone comes in like real hot, never heard of endometriosis, I'm probably not going to talk about it with them the first visit, because we have to honor where they are in their physical body and their nervous system. Not that we're withholding information, but there's other things we can work on first. Right. And then where there's still therapeutic value to not bringing it up. And then when it's right, we bring it up.
Right.
So when sometimes we'll have patients that come in and they're like, I'm not convinced. And I'm like, that's okay. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. And I also do try to operate off of the lens of like, what else could it be other than endometriosis? Right. What is it if it is? What if it is if it's not? Because I don't try to operate from bias. But when there are times where it's like pretty clear that this is what they're dealing with, and if they have only learned of endometriosis, like it has been engraved into their brain that endometriosis is a reproductive condition. And I say to them, I'm like, okay, if I were to tell you, if we were to look at this through the neuroimmunological lens, would that change the way that you perceive your symptoms and what's driving them? And then it's like this shift, like, and it's like, because like what we were saying earlier, it's more neuroimmunologically driven. There are people who all they have is painful period. Those people exist, or all, I shouldn't say all, but their main thing is infertility. No other symptoms. Okay. But that's not the majority.
Right.
That's not the majority. So if we look at it through a different lens, can our brains perceive it differently?
Right. And they're not insignificant symptoms. I think that's something that, the saying comparison kills. It's so true, even in chronic illness. Just because you don't think that yours is significant compared to this other person's doesn't mean that it's not significant to you. Like, it doesn't mean that it's not a driver of the pain that you're experiencing, whether big or small. I mean, you hear excision specialists all the time talking about this. Like, it doesn't matter the size of the lesion, it can cause significant pain. So I really, truly believe you shouldn't compare your pain to someone else's,
Absolutely. I've had multiple patients come in who they had zero pain. And again, I kind of jokingly say like, well, did they not have pain, or they just didn't recognize the pain? But self-reported, they did not have any pain. So they didn't have symptoms, but they found out that their AMH was low.
Right.
And maybe they also had low ferritin. And this was the patient of a very skilled excision surgeon and reproductive specialist. Based on what they see, because it's not an N of 1, it's an N of thousands. It's like, hey, your goal is to be able to have a child one day. Based on what I'm seeing, and from a physical exam, when there's stage 4, category 4, however we want to refer to it, there's what we call like frozen pelvis. And you can feel like, if you're skilled with your hands, you can feel like your abdomen just feels like one block, and it's not soft and supple. It doesn't like to move. And so she also had what they called frozen pelvis, like that was from the physical perspective. And then on her pelvic exam, the surgeon, it wasn't painful to her, but the surgeon found trigger points, like increased tone. So anyway, she had surgery, and this one specific patient that I'm thinking of, and it was stage 4. She ended up staying in the hospital for a week.
Wow.
Just because of how severe things were. And then she also had a bleeding condition that they had found out through doing all this testing. And so it's one of those things like, she had probably one of the most severe cases that I've worked with, aside from like needing a bowel resection, or, like
a colostomy bag.
losing organs, or parts of organs. So just kind of going to say, like, it doesn't, staging category really, as far as quality of life, means nothing.
Mm-mm.
It's helpful to identify. And I think a lot of times people really, I will say with patients, like they will really feel like, what? It was only stage 1? Like after surgery, they really feel almost defeated by it not being more severe. And I have to tell them, I'm like, it has nothing. It has nothing to do with nothing. Like it really is your perceived pain. It depends on where the lesion is. Like it can, there's so many things that can influence somebody's quality of life and what they're experiencing. And it doesn't mean they're weak. It's just, again, there's so much we still don't know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
until there's like funding for unbiased research.
Yep.
So somebody famous with a lot of resources is going to have to get invested in this.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I mean, more people aside, from.
How do we become friends with those people?
I don't know. I try to jump in their DMs, but
We could tag
small
team.
fish.
I mean,
We tag team, just blow them up.
I'm
like, yo, Wendy, Robert, help.
You're right. And something that's interesting. So I'm going to go back. This is rewinding a little bit. So going back to those that we were talking about hip pain and not period pain, because a lot of people think endometriosis period pain. I have to tell you, I think hip pain is one of the most missed symptoms of endometriosis. Do you find that like within physical therapy, seeing this over and over again, you're familiar with it, but I don't think a lot of other physical therapists are familiar with the fact that hip pain is a main generator of endometriosis. Like, can you touch on that just a little bit?
Exactly. Yes, 100% of everything you're saying. And I think probably because hip impingement is a very common issue that we see in pelvic floor therapy. Even if someone comes in with low back pain, they're going to have some degree of hip impingement. Not always, but a lot of times. So the pain patterns that we see with someone who has hip pain, and I'm not necessarily talking about radiating pain during your period hip pain. I am just talking about like what we're referring to, just kind of the generalized hip pain. It looks almost just like hip impingement. So it's super easy to miss. It's super, super easy to miss because it's not necessarily like if we were to screen a hip condition, like a torn labrum, like it's a very specific pain patterns and there's very specific motions that tend to get limited. Hip impingement is a little arbitrary, honestly. Like it could be, is it your hip flexor that's tight? Like what's is it the head of the femur isn't gliding in the socket? Like what's going on here? So, and it's really easy. It's so easy to say like, oh, you have a tight iliopsoas. Let me give you an active release for at home, or let me give you a strengthening exercise. And guess what? A lot of times those exercises will improve the symptoms, the hip pain that you feel associated with endometriosis, because we are still dealing with mechanical tissue. Right. So it's like, oh, well, that iliopsoas exercise helped you. Cool. Oh, well, you didn't. Oh, that pain came back. Were you sitting a lot? Like, did you sit or did you like lift something funny? Oh, it was probably that. Let's just get back to your exercises. And so that's where you have to really go back to that drawing board where we like, okay, get your different colored Sharpies out or dry erase markers and be like, wait a second. I only feel this hip impingement on day 14, 15, 16, 17 of my cycle or during my period. Because it doesn't, when I tell people to track their pain cyclically, it doesn't mean just on their period.
Right.
It could be any phase of the cycle. Typically, not normally like ovulation plus is going to be where we start to see things ramp up, but it could be at any time. So, and it sucks because it doesn't have to be cyclical. It doesn't have to, but those are one of the things that we look for. Or, it's like if it were truly like a hip impingement or say it's a labral tear, there should be specific activities that really light it up. I will say one of my patients, the only time she would feel pain is when she was doing like a single leg deadlift. And she had this pain that a lot of people were calling hamstring tendinopathy, but it had been going on for years and she'd done therapy for it. And it's like, this should have gotten better.
Right.
So again, going back to that, like how many years have you had this going on? It should have gotten better. And then we looked, okay, is this a neural tension issue? Like, do we need to treat more like the nerve gliding and the disc? Okay, that didn't work. but you only feel it with this specific motion. And then sometimes it tends to get a little worse after ovulation. Okay, that's when we look at like somebody like Dr. Passover, look at it through the neuropelviology lens and be like, all right, this isn't tendinopathy. This isn't a sciatic nerve entrapment issue. This is like,
Right.
are we looking at endometriosis here? So this is where it really matters. And this is, and I'll just make a little caveat to why non-insurance based therapy is important. Or I'm not saying you just got to find a really good therapist, and it's hard for those therapists to thrive in an in-network setting because you have to see a patient every 15 minutes. You have to see 20 plus patients a day. And that is hard. I'm human. I would, if you were my last patient on a Friday, I'm sorry. I hope your case was easy. You know what I mean? It's like, it's really hard. And like, I care about the progress of my patient. So if it meant staying late, if it meant like, whatever, like you do what you need to do, but like your practitioner is a human. And so if they're confined to a small box and they have a bajillion other patients, yes, your issues are significant, but they can't always give the attention it needs and the problem solving. So when you have recurring symptoms like maybe a hip impingement or what looks like hip impingement, yeah, this exercise should help. Oh, you gave it a try for 4 weeks and it's still not helping. Oh, well, let's try this instead. Oh, well, you're 70% improved. Well, insurance is only going to pay for 70% improvements. Patient met their goals. They're 70% improved. Bye.
Yeah.
It's a really hard. And so when you're working with one patient and you're talking to Mr. Smith across the gym because he's doing his bridges completely incorrectly, like what are you supposed to do? So it's hard. It's hard. It's the whole healthcare, talking to the choir. Everybody that's listening probably talking to the choir. It's trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Yep. And I think too, like a lot of people don't think, especially because they don't teach this in GYN, like OBGYNs are not taught about uteral sacral ligament endometriosis. And it is found there so frequently, which can cause a lot of pain in your legs, in your hips, like all of those things. And I would say that's probably more prevalent than finding it on the uterus or ovaries, which is why this is not a reproductive disease and it shouldn't be looked at like that. And so that's, for me, I have had back, leg, hip, whatever pain my entire life. And no one picked up on that until my excision surgery. Mind you, I've had 2 ablation surgeries prior to that. And there was ablation done on other organs, but no one looked at that. And that's why having a skilled surgeon that does just endometriosis matters. Like it is worth having those people in your corner to do that. If that is a path you choose and that you can, it is important to do that, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I would agree. It's like we have to serve the person that's in front of them. So if surgery is an option, and again, like I'm not the first to say this and I won't be the last, no surgery is better than a bad surgery.
100%.
So if I had a patient, and again, you got to be careful with the red tape and like how you say things, but there are 2 surgeons in Dallas that I would trust with a family member. And there's others that I feel extremely differently about. And so it's a really hard line to toe when someone is considering surgery with the not preferred surgeon. And so, being able to have a transparent conversation with them about what does this mean? What does it look like? And also saying things in a way that's not going to get you in trouble. That's tough. But okay, it's like if you can't have surgery with this person that's really excellent, but is out of network, and this other surgeon has like a 9-month wait list because they are a network. What are we going to do? Like, what are we going to do? How are we going to manage your symptoms? And that's where my specialty obviously is not pharmaceuticals, but I think that's where you kind of have to have the dialogue with a doctor about, okay, what do we look like? What does it look like to play with some hormones? I'm not even going to try to touch on that subject because that's operating off. I have opinions, but it's operating outside of my scope of practice. So.
Right. Well, and I think that's true. Like we all have to figure out ways to manage our symptoms if surgery is not an option. And I don't think everyone is a good candidate for surgery right away. I think doing physical therapy first is key, honestly, to understanding your symptoms better and understanding your body and what you're living in without as much dysfunction. Like if you can work through some of the dysfunction and wait to have surgery, I think you are better off that way.
Yeah.
And I never had that option. And I can tell you it was a really hard road and still is a very hard road for me. And so I really recommend people doing that. For you, are there tangible tools and ways that people can help alleviate some of these symptoms that we've talked about? Because endometriosis is one piece, but there's so many other pain generators that I'm wondering if are there good tangible ways that you have found for a majority of your patients that they can use?
Yeah. So symptoms vary. What I will say, and again, I know there's going to be some people that listen to this and it's going to make them really annoyed because in their story, it's not true. You know what I mean? Everybody's story is different. But if we're just kind of going off of our top 3 things, every single one of my patient is going to get diaphragmatic breathing. Because we know that it stimulates the nervous, it engages parasympathetic nervous system, vagus nerve directly, and because of the impact on the lymphatic system. So, but what I do try to what makes a difference, because belly breathing and diaphragmatic breathing are not the same thing. So people think I'm doing yoga. I'm trying to calm my body down. I do belly breathing. I do diaphragm breathing all the time. It's like, you're actually doing belly breathing. It's not wrong, but it's not the same thing. And what I will say, especially for my EDS people, is a lot of times it's because the body likes to find the path of least resistance. My EDS patients, their bellies just balloon up when we start doing diaphragm breathing. So if someone's not familiar with diaphragm breathing, I like to use the term 3-dimensional breathing. A lot of good pelvic floor therapists will do this. You put your hands, if you think Lego hands, you put your fingers in the front of your rib cage and your thumbs in the back. So you're holding on to the sides of your rib cage. So fingers in the front, thumbs in the back. And then you take a breath in through your nose. And when you do that, you want your hands to expand. You want your fingers and your thumbs to get further away from each other. So you want to feel movement in the front of the rib cage, the sides and the back. You don't want to use your neck a lot. For anybody watching, when you breathe in, sometimes you'll see that scalene, platysmus activation. We want to bring the air down. So you want to breathe down into the lower rib cage. And so most people, especially who are really overactive, not that EDS can't be overactive, but a lot of people are overactive. They tend to breathe in the neck. EDS people tend to breathe down into the lower abdomen pubic bone area. So we want to find that middle. So as far as dosing goes, I'll tell people either to just set a timer for 3 minutes. So they're not concentrating on reps. They're just focusing on time. And when the alarm goes off, they can stop. There's also 4-7-8 breathing that is really nice because we know that a breath hold. So 4-7-8 breathing is you breathe in through the nose for a count of 4, hold your breath for a count of 7, exhale through the mouth for a count of 8. It's a good way to control your breath. So we're getting the diaphragm breathing on the inhale. With the breath hold, we're increasing our nasal nitric oxide, which can help with vasodilation and is again, good for pelvic floor issues in general. And then with the forced exhale, we're really expelling a lot of that CO2, more controlled. So we're focused, it's intentional and it's controlled. Or there's the box breathing, which I feel like a lot of people are familiar with. So we'll do some form of diaphragmatic breathing. And then especially if someone is trying to operate their care at home, I really love pelvic wands to work on lengthening and reducing trigger points in the pelvic floor, because that muscle tension can be a pain generator, and it can also feed into constipation, and it can feed into bladder dysfunction and a bad mortgage. I mean, I'm just kidding. But pelvic floor therapy, pelvic floor tension is the bane of our existence. So it also keeps us in business, unfortunately. So I like a pelvic wand. What I will say, if when you're inserting a pelvic wand, if because you need to use lubricant with it, if your pain, if it's okay, there's a difference between oh, this is weird and awkward and I don't love this versus owie, 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 this is sharp and it hurts. If that's more than above a 2 on a 1 to 10 scale of pain, you might not be a candidate for a wand. Or you may need to try again at a different time, or you may need to use dilators, because a lot of times with endometriosis, we're looking at what we would call superficial and deep dyspareunia. So superficial dyspareunia would be superficial pain with penetration. during intercourse. And then there's deep dyspnea, which is like, hey, my guts are getting stabbed anytime I have penetrative intercourse. That's actually a big sign. If someone comes in and they say like, oh yeah, when I have sex, it feels like my guts are getting stabbed. I'm like, and normally those are my words, not theirs, because that's not something they just say it hurts. I'm like, well, yeah, right. So that's a huge flag to me that they could have adenomyosis and endometriosis. Yeah. But we have to differentiate. Okay, are you having penetrative pain only with sex, or is it anything like vaginismus? So insidious pain with penetration with tampon, speculum, partner, whatever. So if a wand, which the tip is not super large, if that's painful, then I would pivot to doing a dilator set to work on letting your body become accustomed to having some penetration, but also it's just stretching the muscles like any other place of the body. I tell people that pelvic floor, when we do internal work, it's just orthopedics in a warm, cozy cave. Like it's not taboo. It's not weird. It is what it is. It's muscles just like your hamstrings or your biceps. So we can use the dilators to help let your body become accustomed to a little bit of stretch, which can help relax the muscles to allow you to do the pelvic wand. I will say across the board, this isn't the case for everybody. Across the board, people with endometriosis don't typically have a problem tolerating the penetration of a wand.
Okay.
So now if you do have if you have vaginismus, you'll know like early on, as soon as either you try to use a tampon or you go to the OB or you have intercourse for the first time, or if you use a vibrator or something, a toy, you'll know. So it's just getting into the weeds and teasing out what's what.
Yeah.
So using pelvic floor tools, and even on so I have my Dr. Taylor Reyes Instagram and we have our Fire Physical Therapy Instagram. Both we have basic instructions on how to use that kind of stuff. And Intimate Rose it's like my go-to because they're just great. Amanda Olson, she's a physical therapist. She developed the products. They're really user-friendly, great ergonomics. They have information on their website as well. They have a lot of really good free information. So we like to use the tools because sometimes people don't want to put their hands in their body. If you don't want to spend money on a tool, you can absolutely wash your hands and use your thumb even for just some basic internal stretching. You could get on your hands and knees. You could prop one foot up on the toilet and just kind of get your thumb up in there and just start stretching down towards the ground. Typically with wands or with our hands, we don't really need to be pushing up towards the bladder. Typically we're pushing down. Like if you think of a clock face and you think of like your clitoris as like 12 o'clock and anus is 6 o'clock, you're typically staying between 3 and 9 o'clock. In that bottom half of the clock face when you're doing any type of muscle work at home, whether it's with your hands or a tool. And so I think it's just getting comfortable, being open to it. I do have patients that want to stick nothing up their body at all ever. And that's when it's like, okay, we just really got to do a lot of hip mobility and a lot of diaphragm breathing. Internal rotation, external rotation. Sumo squats are the best. Now, what if you have a knee or hip issue? Okay, well, we can find modifications for that.
Right. I think breathing, even, Dr. Mark Possover talked about that very thing. Breathing makes such a big difference. Your body needs that oxygen flow, just that chamber to keep that sympathetic system better regulated. And the other thing he talks a lot about this too. It's really hard for someone to downregulate their sympathetic system. You have to upregulate the parasympathetic system. So you have to upregulate that rest and digest because the fight or flight is a stubborn little beast that it's nearly impossible to snap yourself out of that. You have to, it's practicing those things that will allow you that rest and digest, which will bring down that sympathetic system. If that makes sense.
This is just one of my experience, and yes, everything to what you just said. Yes, 100%. But after when I had my surgery, most of mine, it was a lot of places, but I had a lot of bladder and ureter. And so one of the symptoms that really ramped up for me before surgery was urgency. Like I was going to pee all the time. And this is where I want to say there's a lot of pelvic floor therapists that know nothing about endometriosis. That's no shade to them. They just don't. It's just a different specialty, just like traditional OB-GYNs don't know what endometriosis is actually. Right. So all that to say, if you go to a pelvic floor therapist and your urgency isn't getting better, probably not, it's not just overactive bladder or whatever, however they're treating you. So that symptom for me got better, like 60% better, ish. like plus or minus, depending on the day after surgery. And then shortly after that, I started using this little haptic feedback tool called the Apollo Neuro. And this isn't necessarily a plug for that company, but just for wearable tools that you can use to stimulate your nervous system or parasympathetic nervous system. And it was a little bracelet that it just needs to touch your bone, and it vibrates at a frequency that's supposed to help bring you down. And when I started wearing that, after a couple of weeks, I realized my urgency was like 90% improved.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that's where we kind of get back to teasing through, okay, what is mechanical tension because of either overactive muscles or pathology,
Right.
or what is your nervous system being like, where's the freaking bear? And why,
Right.
is it still here? I don't know. So it significantly improved. And then I eventually didn't need to wear it anymore. So it's in a closet somewhere. I don't know where. It's expensive. So I wish I knew where it was. But but it was a really great temporary tool for me. And there's other devices like Sensate and Pulsetto. Like you could just type in like vagus nerve stimulator, and and there's stuff, you could probably find something on Amazon that's like $20.
Right.
It really doesn't have to be fancy.
Humming is another thing too. Music or humming, like a deep hum, will stimulate that as well. And you can do that for free on your own.
Yes. There's this workshop I teach about how to manage your vagus nerve at home for free.
Yeah.
And it's like when we're accessing like the whatever cranial nerve feeds into nerve. Like I said, my brain is a little sloppy today. So when we're basically accessing the ear component, like you said, listening to pleasing music, listening to an audio book, listening to certain frequencies, was it like the 457 hertz, something like that? And then the humming, so that accesses the nasopharynx branch. So open mouth or closed mouth humming, gurgling, then we can get down into the cervical branches and we can do gentle stroking to the sides of the neck, not the front. If it's beating, get off of it. So stay to the sides, so you want to do that. And then you can come down and do some diaphragm breathing. Sipping on cold liquids can help stimulate the vagus nerve. So there's like you said, there's so many things you can do to help access it. And one time is not enough. So everybody, not just patients, be like, "Oh, I tried it and didn't work." Well, how many times? Like it's free. Like it's free. This isn't gonna. If it worked perfectly 100% of the time, everybody would be doing it, and we wouldn't need all of this other stuff. So you have to give it time. You have to start teaching your body, like, oh, this is what we're trying to do. You have to retrain. Like people get this with hair styling. If you like curls in your hair, you kind of have to train your hair to curl.
Right.
Like
teach yourself how to curl.
Yeah, you have to teach yourself how to curl your hair, and then your hair will eventually start to hold curls more. Or vice versa, if you have curls and you're straightening it. But it takes time. And it's like you wake up one day and it's like, oh, my hair looks great. Or whatever. It's the same thing with your nervous system. Like you have to put the reps in, and you have to put consistency in. Yeah. Red light devices. Red light stuff is huge right now. Red light there's a lot of strong science behind it in general, especially for acute healing or surgical healing, acute joint issues. But the thing is, I have patients, should I buy this? I'm like, I don't know. Can you be compliant 5 days a week for 10 to 20 minutes at a time? Because if you can't, it's a waste of money. Like it's like antioxidants, right? Like you are being hit with oxidative stress all the time, every day. So for an antioxidant to be effective, which it is, you have to consume it regularly. Right. So it's the same thing with red light. It's the same thing training your nervous system. If you want your strength to maintain, you have to exercise your body. If you want your pelvic muscles to learn to live in a relaxed state or an efficient state, you have to put effort into it. Yeah. And I think we were talking about this. We're kind of in this culture of comfort and borderline entitlement to results. And it's like you get the results when you put the work in.
Yeah. 100%.
I wish that weren't the case, but it just is.
We are instant gratification people, like just culture wise. This is a broad statement, but like we thrive in instant gratification. We Google instantly. We expect the answers instantly. We don't have dial up anymore, right? So it's like it's so different. Like the 90s, 80s and 90s babies, they get it, like the dial up and the, we don't have that. We are instant gratification. We get our news instantly. And there's so many things that can be good about that, but there's so many things that aren't great about that, right? So I think just like everything, it's consistency, it's habit, it's something that you implement. It's a lifestyle change. That's true with our eating. That's true with the way that we sleep. That's, all of these are lifestyle habits that we have to form. Otherwise, it's just a fad diet of sorts.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Question for you though. We were talking about breathing when we're talking about diaphragmatic breathing for EDS patients. I've used the balloon method before with where you inhale same count with a balloon to help me feel that tension in my diaphragm as opposed to belly breathing. Have you experienced that, or do you use that at all? Is that helpful for EDS patients?
Balloon therapy absolutely can be. There are sometimes it just doesn't connect, and we just have to just dig deep. Okay, what cues can we use to help the person connect? But balloons are a great diaphragm tool. There's a style of therapy, Postural Restoration Institute, PRI, and they're big into the balloons. And it can be some really great stuff, especially for EDS patients. We don't do a lot of it in our clinic. We don't have anybody really specialized in PRI, and it can get, when you go deep into it, it can get a little convoluted. And it can make it hard. The patient almost has to become the expert also.
Yeah.
And so with compliance, it can get a little bit hard. But compliance across the board is hard anyway. So it's just I try to go for low hanging fruit that involves as little steps as possible. Because we get a lot of moms and it's oh, you have 17 exercises you want me to do that involve getting down on the floor with equipment? That's going to work. No, it's not. It's really not. None of us. So, it's just, but that's when we look. And I will also say, to the patients out there, when you're working with your therapist, if they give you a plan and it doesn't work for you, you're allowed to say that.
Right.
You're allowed to say hey, I'm being honest here. I don't see myself doing this. It is our job to figure out, why? What is it? Is it too hard? Is it too boring? Is it accessibility? Do you not have the time? It is our job to modify it to where it does meet your needs or meet your time constraints or whatever the limiting factor is. I feel just sad for people when they say oh yeah, I went to PT once and then I just stopped because it was just too much work. I'm bro, you should have said something. Yeah. Because seriously, and that's a conversation I have in our evals. I'm okay, there is no wrong answer here, but what is realistic how many minutes a day, how many days a week is realistic that you can devote? You're allowed to say 30 seconds twice a week. That is an acceptable answer. There's only so much we can do within those 30 seconds twice a week. Or do I give you exercises that you do while you're sitting at your desk that don't require focus? You know what I mean? It's our job to get. So I think people think that just because the PT says X, Y, and Z, that means that's the only option. No, there's always an opportunity to dialogue. And if your therapist is I don't love that, then just go find somebody else. It's your time, your money. Nobody cares about your body as much as you do.
Yeah. That patient autonomy is huge. I was looking at Instagram the other day and there were these doctors, they interviewed them, and it was at a fertility conference, and they said, what do you wish your parent or your patients would know? And they're stop trying to overdiagnose. Let me treat you. And I'm no, it's a team effort here. Yeah. And I just was appalled by that, because I felt you're taking away some of their power by telling them this. They have to live in their body. You don't. They have to live with these decisions. You don't. And so I think exactly what you're saying is be vocal to your providers and stand up, and it's hard, especially, a lot of us it doesn't come natural to us to stand up and say, this isn't really going to work for me, or I don't like that approach, or I don't like taking opioids for pain. I don't want to do that. It's okay to stand up for yourself in doing that. So 100%, I really think advocating patient autonomy is very important across the board.
It's also okay to just sit and listen, say thank you very much, and never go back.
Yeah.
Because 100%. Some people get really intimidated by the concept of conflict or the potential of conflict. And it's you can actually avoid it. You just don't go back. Yeah. You just don't, you just unsubscribe, just block the number. I even had a physician appointment a couple weeks ago, and I was not seeking their advice, but they decided to give me their, it was a really frustrating conversation. And especially somebody who's in healthcare, I didn't think I was going to be in a position where I was like, I wasn't even asking to be gaslit, and I was, and it was really frustrating. And at one point I just stopped the conversation. I said, thank you for having this dialogue with me. I don't agree, but I also don't need your answer. And I kind of finished up care with what we had going on, and I am transferring the next time I need services from a provider like this. I'm driving the 4 hours to Houston to see a different provider because that's how important it is.
Right.
Because I'm done talking to these people who refuse to leave pride at the door.
Right.
You know, it's like, it's my time, it's my money, it's my journey. And, but even getting to a place, and I'm a practitioner, even getting to the place to have the confidence to say like, no, thank you. It's hard. So you don't, like, patients don't owe anybody anything. If something rubbed them the wrong way, they don't agree, they feel a certain way, they're allowed to just say bye.
Yep.
And never look back.
It's so true. Oh my goodness. Like, I feel like we could talk for hours and hours and hours and hours because there's so many things that I'm sure we could solve the world problems by just sitting down if everyone would listen, right? But just sitting down with you, gaining your knowledge, gaining just the way that you look at care and the expertise that you have is just so refreshing for someone like me. You know, this is why I love doing what I do, is because I get to learn alongside of everyone else and get to meet amazing people like you. And it just is such a breath of fresh air to sit down with you. And if people want to learn more from you, where can they find you on any platform?
Yes. So on Instagram, it's primarily Instagram. My handle is Dr. Taylor Reyes, just DrTaylorReyes. And we also have our clinic page. It's Instagram at Fire Physical Therapy, FIRE, and then physical therapy. I will say that my personal page is kind of that more silly educational content, like we're talking about all the silly weird stuff, or I might get a little salty and spicy. And you also will get a little mix of like orthopedic, low back pain, core, TMJ, because that's a whole other subject.
That's a whole other subject.
That's a whole other subject. Yeah. And then our Fire page is, it's a little more professional, a little more refined. So, but we have a lot of information on both pages. I'm not really on TikTok. I might be actually, but I'm not active on it. And
it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I'm too old for TikTok. So
same. I'm not on TikTok either. But your content is amazing. If you don't follow Taylor, I recommend you do it because you will learn so much in a way that isn't aggressive or over sensationalized, but simple, direct, and full of like really good tangible tools, which I appreciate that. So thank you for making it simple for this little brain of mine.
Thank you. I will say our clinic website is firephysicaltherapy.com. And we do have, I've been on other podcasts and we do a lot of endometriosis, some TMJ stuff. And so and then we have philosophy and things like that on our clinic page too.
Yeah. And if I lived closer, I'd be there in a heartbeat. It's just, this distance thing.
I know it's a factor.
It is a factor. It's really a bummer. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit with me. And I just really loved this conversation. I love the fruitful nature and the relational nature of just sitting down with people at the table and being real. So I appreciate you just being real and honest and authentic and taking the time to do that with me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Same. All of the above. Same.
Until next time, everyone, continue advocating for you and for others.